Got a few things we're working on. The turbo 3800 Camaro. Let's just dive right in. Put an air filter on. That's neat. Tiny little thing. I'm gonna work on putting a brace or a bracket for this turbo to just kind of help support it, help get that weight off that exhaust that I built, maybe help prevent it from cracking. I don't know, but I have this piece. I think this was for the AC bracket, I think, maybe, but it's all cut up and it just so happens to fit just like that. So I could take the nuts off, put that on, and then put the nuts over it and tie it in there. And then what I'm thinking, I found this piece in my garage. Just drilled a hole here. I think I can tie it into this alternator bracket. Let me show you what I'm picturing. So a little something like that. Bolted in here at the back of that alternator bracket. So that's going to be bolted down, and then if I cut this and weld it at a 90 or whatever angle that is, I'm thinking weld it to that piece, and then bam, I have a nice easy bracket. That should help. So here's the bracket bolted in. I had to trim the edges here and elongate the holes just to make sure they lined up, but it bolted in. I may want to get longer bolts. They're like just barely on the edge of whether it's enough thread engagement or whatnot. But so this is loosely in here, just taking my wrench here as a straight edge, and looks like roughly right about there. So I'm just going to put my Sharpie mark to the left of my wrench and I'll have a good spot to cut. It's starting to come together. So the piece I cut off just so happens to fit. It's going to line up perfectly with that. Now this will be up a little bit, but it lines up perfectly. We can weld it at that joint there, and then we'll be able to cut this and weld that where I had that Sharpie mark. So I'm going to start with taking everything apart, welding this side, just tacking it on, and then we can make sure we get this lined up. Tacked up and it fits. So we are good to take this off and fully weld it up, maybe paint it too. Yep. Here it is all welded up and painted. I threw the high heat primer and high heat flat black on, welded on both sides just to make sure it was strong enough. This is much thicker than I'm used to welding, so I had to turn the heat up quite a bit. So let's throw this in and see how it looks. And that fit perfectly. So real proud that I was able to get that lined up, didn't warp anything, it just fit. It's fully tightened. Like I said, I could maybe get some longer bolts so I have some more thread engagement on both of these, but it is tight. The bolt here is tight, plenty tight, so the alternator is still nice and secured. And now we have a support bracket, and there we have it. It's on there. So let me know what you think. Is this doing anything? Is it not? Is there a better way to design this? I don't know. This is just kind of what I came up with in my head, what made sense to me, and I'm hopeful that it's going to do something. So now working on a radiator mount. This is the factory mount. I've kind of cut up the box in here, and I like this mount because of it has like a hook. There's this square channel that the radiator just fits perfectly. However, now with the radiator tucked forward from the factory, it's like out here, but tucked in more, well, the holes don't line up. So what I am going to do is drill a hole in the new locations, and we're going to put rib nuts, and that should hopefully allow this to work. Now I cut this out kind of prematurely. I wish I would have kept this section to completely seal this, so I might need to come back and plasti weld or fiberglass something in to do a nice seal. That way the radiator gets as much airflow as possible. We're using an M6 rib nut, and I don't know what the correct drill bit size is, but I know it's slightly smaller than 3/4. So we're using the next size I have under that, some fraction, and we're just going to waller it out just a little bit. So we did the pilot hole. Now there's our hole, and we're just gonna try test fitting until this fits. There we go. And just like that, we got a rib nut. We got our 2 rib nuts. I think that's all I'll need. The factory radiator support bolts are the same for this same thread for this M6. That's couldn't be any more perfect. And the 2 bolts tightened down. I was able to use the impact, and that's in there. That's not going anywhere. So now the next question, will this close, or do we need to modify it some more? It sticks out kind of farther than it did before, and it's not going down. We're touching, so looks like we got to do some trimming. It's probably touching right here. All right, finalized. Looking good. I filed off the edges so there's no sharp edges or anything. It looks pretty good. It's okay. I would like this to be covered, but we'll address that later if I have an overheating issue. Now we're working on relocating the power steering reservoir. So I sucked out the fluid from the reservoir. Now there's still some in the line, so I have a pan underneath. This is probably going to be a little messy, but I basically need to disconnect this. As you see, it's not going to work here. For one, it can't go in this location. If I do offset, we're still like super close to the exhaust. It's not good. So I want to move it somewhere over here. There's an open space here. I think we can make that happen, but first let's disconnect these lines and move it over. So I took the bracket off for the power steering reservoir. It was just 4 nuts down below the ABS pump, and I want to bolt the reservoir in. I don't want to zip tie it. I don't want to do anything like that. I want to actually have it secured. So I'm fitting this in here. There just so happens to be a hole right under here. We can fit the bracket in, and if we cut and trim it just right, it's going to be able to stick up. Now the problem with it like this is it's the wrong direction. If we want it to line up like this, well, it can't because of the edges on the bottom. Now I can trim the edges, that way it can go up higher, and maybe that's what I'll do. Because it's either that or cut this in half, flip it, weld it like that, but maybe cutting will be easier. So that's how much I took off. Only a little bit on this side, but had to take out a big chunk right here. And now it fits perfectly. Pulled out the rib nut tool again, and we got the bracket in. It's a little wobbly, and that's because I only went with 2 bolts instead of the 4. And with just the 2, it does wobble ever so slightly, but that's okay. It's out of the way, rib nutted in, so we're good there. And then this will just pop. Oh, we are leaking. That will just pop on right just like that, and we are still free of the hood and latch and all that. And since we're moving the reservoir, we have to change the hoses up. So the drain line, or the feed I guess, to the pump is too short, so using this leftover hose I had from the oil drain, 5/8 diameter, that slipped on. Had to heat it up to get it on, but it slipped on. And now we'll be able to hook this up to the pump, cut it to length, and we're gonna have to shorten the one coming from the cooler. Okay, got that reservoir all relocated. That's all wrapped up. For the oil cooler side, or the power steering cooler side, I had to go under the wiring harness back here. It was a little funky, and we're not pinched or anything. The hose I'm using is really tough, so it would be hard to pinch it anyways, so that's fine. For the drain back to the power steering pump, I had to go actually through the opening down here, through the opening in the bracket, just over the intercooler piping, and then it goes into the power steering pump. No kinks or anything. It is touching the metal bracket, but there's no sharp edges on that bracket where it's touching. So I think that'll be okay, and we're still securely mounted. We have some clamps here. We're going to reattach our power steering cooler, but this time instead of the AC condenser, it's going to the radiator. Got the power steering cooler mounted in. Had to drop the cooling fan out of the way in order to fit the clips in, but they're in, so let's button everything back up again. Lastly, here we have some heat management to do. Specifically, the engine ground cable is right between the two exhausts from the manifold and then the downpipe, and the battery positive for the alternator is also sandwiched right there, and it's actually sitting on the exhaust. So I'm going to start with the alternator one. I think that'll be a little easier. I'm going to try to unbolt that and route it above the exhaust instead of under the header. Alternator wire was easy enough. Just pulled it out, route it up and over into the back of the alternator, and what I'm going to do is end up zip tying it to the negative cable down here to help secure it, maybe even to the heater hose down here. That'd be a good idea. Now for my negative, I got it out, and I could go from above, but I don't think I could with this fitting on it. So what I'm going to do, as you see, I have this heat wrap here. It's cut to length, and then it velcros to itself, so it's gonna stay. Just shove that on. Now I'll fit this back in, and the velcro, the heat shield part's just gonna live between the two exhaust pipes. And underneath the car, put some of that heat shield wrap around the oil feed line so it's close to the downpipe, and then just threw some zip ties to the drain, so that way it's just secured out of the way. It's not going to flop against anything. Also hooked this radiator clip back in, so we're all set here, and I think we're in a good spot now. I feel like we got a lot done, a lot of little things, but they're all very much needed and important. Lots of things secured, a lot of heat treatment, heat management, and I think this is what I'm most proud of. That looks good there, and it fits good. So overall, we're in a good spot, and I think we're ready to start doing some fueling upgrades. So once we do that, we can get a tune, and then we can really drive this thing. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.